Hello everyone, welcome back to Amy's Bookshelf. Today I'll be doing my June wrap up. It's a little bit late, but I was on holiday for the first week of July and then I just haven't got around to filming it. So I'm doing it now for you and hopefully it'll be out in the next few days. So these are the books I read in June. I think there's 9 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 here and then one more that I read on audio. So 9 in total. So yeah, pretty good reading month. Okay, first up is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. Now, if you watched my video where I ordered some books for my birthday with some vouchers that I got for my birthday, you will know that this is one of the ones that was recommended to me by a friend, and so I decided to read it. I am a romance lover, and as someone who loves romance, I really don't read enough of it, so it's really good to get back into reading romance. This one is sapphic, and I believe there's 2 in the series. I don't know if there are going to be any more, but at the moment there is 2. This is about Delilah Green, who ends up going back to her hometown that she hasn't been back to for years to photograph her stepsister's wedding, I believe. And the friendship that she has, or it's not really a friendship in the beginning, but the relationship she has with one of her stepsister's friends. So yeah, like I said, sapphic romance, really good to get back into the genre, and overall I really loved this book. It was very easy to read, very fast. You can kind of read it in a day. If you have a whole day in front of you and you just want to read something in one go, this is definitely one that you could. Great sex scenes, great building of the romance generally. My only qualm, and it's very specific, but I feel like it's still a qualm, is that because both of the protagonists, or both the people in the main relationship, use the same pronouns, so she, her, when they're having sex, or when there are just sex scenes generally, the author kept referring to one of them, say, as Delilah, and then Claire, who's the other person in the relationship, she would refer to her as the other woman, which made her sound like some kind of mistress. And also, I just found it really jarring, especially during a sex scene where you kind of really want to get lost in the scene. And you want to get lost in the romance of it all. It kind of kept pulling me out of it. And I know it's tricky because if they do use the same pronouns, you don't just want to keep saying she, her, because it gets confusing. But I feel like there must be a way around it. And maybe the author has realised that and done better in a different book. I don't know, but minor point. But yeah, I really didn't enjoy that. But the rest of it was really good. I really enjoyed it. And I think I gave it probably 4.5 stars overall. Next up is Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman. This is about Eve, who has a girlfriend but isn't very secure in her sort of relationship because she is worrying that if she stays with the same person for the rest of her life, then that's kind of it. So one day she decides to post some nudes online, and through doing that she meets Olivia and Nathan, who are in a relationship, and Eve becomes a third party in their relationship. Now, going into this, and at the beginning of the read, I have to admit I didn't really get it. I was a bit sort of confused about the point of the book, about why I should care about any of the characters, because none of them are particularly likeable. But I stuck with it, and actually by the end I did really enjoy what the book was sort of saying about identity, about sexuality, relationships, our insecurity in our relationships as well, and it really did a good job of exploring that. There are loads of different sort of themes and topics that are explored throughout the book, and yeah, overall I did really enjoy it. But if you do read it and at the beginning you're not quite sure, I would just say stick with it, because I wasn't sure at the beginning either, and it does get better, or at least it convinces you to carry on reading. It's not a particularly plot heavy book, definitely more sort of character and theme driven, so not exactly fast paced, but like I said, I really enjoyed the themes that the author explored. So yeah, overall very glad I read it, and I think I gave this 4 stars as well. Next is Hyde by Matthew Griffin. This I picked up in a bookshop in York, which was called, I can't remember. It was a queer bookshop and I can't remember what it's called, but I will link it in the description below. Not a very big place, but one of the things I loved about it is they had little flags sticking out the top of loads of the books, which told you about identity themes that explored, or just a specific sexuality that the book was tied to. So it could be a bisexual flag or a trans flag, and then it would kind of help you explore the bookshop a bit better. And that's not something I've ever seen before, so I really enjoyed that. Like I said, I'll link it below because I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, this intrigued me because it's sort of historical fiction-ish it spans quite a long time, and just sounded very character driven, a bit romantic, and like a very slow paced story. So yeah, was excited to read it. So essentially it is about two men, Wendell Wilson and Frank Clifton, and they meet, I think, just after the Second World War. And obviously their relationship isn't particularly welcomed by the community, so what they decide to do is live in isolation from the rest of the world, essentially. And so the way they choose to live their life is, like I said, live in isolation in this big house that's far away from anybody else, and also only leave the house individually. They never leave the house together, they're never seen out in public together, because they just don't want to experience the hatred and ridicule from the community for loving each other, and would rather just live in isolation and live together happily like that. Now, like I said, this spans a very long period of time, and it was just a really kind of slow burn, character driven story. For a specific comparison, if you have seen The Last of Us and you really liked the relationship between Nick Offerman and the other man, I don't know the actor's name, but Nick Offerman and the other character in that relationship, if you really like that part of The Last of Us, then I would really recommend this, because it gave me exactly the same vibe. So there are a lot of moments in this where it's very much like bickering, an old married couple, and just a pair of people that have clearly known each other for a very long time and know each other very well, know how to wind each other up, but also love each other so deeply. And I think ultimately that's what I really loved about it, and I did give this 5 stars. Next is Reasons to be Cheerful by Nina Stibbe. This has been on my TBR for ages, and I've never really picked it up because it just didn't really look that exciting. It is about Lizzie Bogle, who becomes a dental assistant despite the fact she has no qualifications, and it is about her just trying to work out her place in life, her career, how to balance the relationship with friends, with boyfriends, her mother, and things like that. To be honest, it wasn't my favourite book in the world. It was very easy to read. I'd recommend it if you're like going on holiday and you want something sort of easy to read, like at the airport or on the beach or whatever. And I think this is the kind of book that would really be popular in, like, say, book clubs or yeah, like an airport bookshop. I think that just strikes me as the kind of book that would be really popular there. Sort of popular with people who don't really read much, who maybe only read when they go on holiday. So they only read a couple of books a year. I think for some reason I feel like this book would be really popular with that demographic. But yeah, it had a few interesting twists and turns, I will give it that. And there's a particular moment in it which is really quite bleak. And in a way I think that would have been more interesting to explore rather than if the book had taken the trajectory that it did. However, overall, it was well written, it was good enough. It just wasn't my cup of tea, I don't think, so I give it 3 stars overall. Next up is A Year of Marvellous Ways by Sarah Winman. Now, if you follow me on social media or you have heard me talk about Sarah Winman before, then you will know I really love her. I have read Tin Man, When God Was a Rabbit, and Still Life, all 3 of which I really enjoyed. So I was excited to read another Sarah Winman book. Going into this, some people had told me that this wasn't normal for Sarah Winman and was a bit unlike other books that she has written, so I was sort of a bit apprehensive. Now, having finished it, I do completely agree with that sentiment. It doesn't feel like her other books. I mean, it does in some ways, like the writing and the characters and the lack of speech marks, but in other ways it felt very whimsical and it's not really centred in its plot. So it is quite hard to focus on, it is quite hard to understand what's going on. So if you're looking for something that's really going to grip you, I wouldn't recommend this because it's hard to stay with. I think the only reason I did stick with it is because I really love the characters, and Sarah Winman's really good at building beautiful characters quite slowly, so you don't really realise you're falling in love with them until you already have. And I love that about her, and I did like that about this book, as I love with all of her books. But there just wasn't enough plot, so unfortunately I didn't really like this and I gave it 3 stars. I realise I haven't actually told you what it's about. So it is about Marvellous Ways, who is an 80-year-old woman, and about a soldier who washes up by her house in Cornwall called Francis Drake. So it's sort of about their relationship, but also about their history, their pasts, and other people and other relationships that they have as well. So yeah, 3 stars overall. Next up is a book that I did an ad for on Instagram, and that is called Let's Talk About Loneliness by Simone Heng. This is a non-fiction and it is about loneliness in the modern world. So this was sent to me by Hay House Publishing, thank you very much, and I really loved it. So it is essentially a memoir slash self-help book. And the reason I don't really want to specifically call it a self-help book is because I do think that Simone Heng does a really good job of weaving her own narrative, her own like autobiography into the pages, and she does it so it makes the book relatable. I think when you have a self-help book that is from, you know, somebody who you don't know, who you've never met, and they're sort of trying to give you this advice, it's quite hard sometimes to take the advice seriously, or you just question, well, why should I trust you? But because Simone talks about her own life and her own experiences in this book, I think it gives the book much more gravitas, and I really loved it for that. And I think it made it so much more personable, and like I said, I just really wanted to take Simone's advice a lot more. So yeah, like I said, it talks about loneliness. In particular, it talks about it in relation to COVID, the pandemic, and social media, how we're all sort of connected so much more, and yet we are also so lonely, because while we have these relationships online, that doesn't necessarily mean that they translate to the real world, and that can mean that often people, while they are very sociable and popular, they aren't necessarily happy because they are experiencing this loneliness because of the world that we currently live in. So yeah, if you're interested in sort of COVID narratives, or you just want some sort of tips on how to stay more connected to people, then I would really recommend it, and I gave this one 4 stars. Okay, and next up is my only audiobook read of the month, which is She Gets the Girl by Rachel Lippincott. This is another romance, yay. And this has been on my radar for a while. Again, similar to Delilah Green, it is a sapphic romance, and I was just excited to read one. My best friend Jazz from Travels and Fiction, I actually bought this for her birthday last year or the year before, and she read it a few months ago and said it was really good, so I tried to prioritise it so that we could discuss. She Gets the Girl is about Molly and Alex. They are both enrolled in the same university, and they are both very different people. So Alex is quite outgoing. She has a bit of a tumultuous relationship with her girlfriend, and she is determined to win her back. And Molly is in love with one of her classmates who is also going to the same university, but apart from that has never kind of ventured out of her shell, really struggles to make friends, suffers with anxiety, and really wants to fall in love but just struggles to make it happen. Alex and Molly become unlikely friends when Alex tells Molly that she will help her get her crush. She will help her become more sociable so that she can ask out the girl that she fancies. She also has her own prerogative because Alex wants to use this in order to prove to her ex/current girlfriend that she isn't a selfish person and that she can help other people. So yeah, there's a lot of different dynamics and relationships going on, but it essentially is the story of Alex and Molly. Now, I really loved a lot about this book. In particular, I loved that there wasn't a really stupid miscommunication trope, and that also there wasn't sort of like a villain of the book. And now that's kind of hard to say without spoiling it, so I won't spoil it, but essentially, in some romances, I feel like what can sometimes happen is that other people get caught up in the romance, and then they sort of get framed as this villain, even though they haven't really done anything wrong. Or alternatively, the author makes them a villain so that the two people they want to fall in love can fall in love, and it kind of removes them from the situation. I loved that this didn't do that, because it was very much just like real people, like real new adults, because they're all obviously just starting university, so they're all quite young, all just kind of struggling with normal things that teenagers struggle with. And I really loved that. It felt very relatable, it felt very realistic, and the romance was good. It took a long time to get there, and I kind of would like a sequel, because I feel like the book actually didn't have much of their relationship in it at all. But yeah, it was really good, really feel good, and really enjoyed it. I think I kind of have to give it 5 stars given how much I've gushed about it. I want to give it 4.5 just because, I don't know, I feel like sometimes when you don't immediately say 5 it means it's not a 5-star, but maybe I'm being harsh, so let's just say 5 stars and I'll leave it there. Okay, final 2. First is Front Desk by Kelly Yang. This was my book club's pick for this month, and this is a middle grade read. So we specifically wanted to read a middle grade this month, so all of the suggestions for the poll were middle grade picks, and this is the one that got chosen. This is about Mia Tang, who moved to the US from China with her parents a couple of years previously to the book, and they find themselves running a motel. The motel is owned by Mr. Yao, who isn't a very nice person and makes it very difficult for them to earn a living and try and build a place for themselves in the motel and in the community. But yeah, the main story is about Mia, about her starting a new school, living in a motel and helping her parents run it, and just basically finding out a bit more about the world, about how she fits into it and what her future might look like. So this book has a lot jam-packed into it. There are a lot of characters, there are a lot of themes, and there's a lot of plot as well. So we have Mia and her parents, we have Mr. Yao, we have the regulars who live at the motel. We also have the guests that come to the motel and stay for a night or two. We have other people at Mia's school. We have some people... Sorry, my video cut out there because I once again have no storage on my phone. Yay. I don't even know where I got to. Lots of things going on in this book. Yeah, it's really, really jam-packed, and I often find that middle grades are really good at dealing with so many like heavy topics. So immigration and racism are really, really tackled like head on in this book, in a really brilliant way for like all readers, not just young readers, but everybody, which is great. Also, Mia as a protagonist is just so lovable. There's so much that she kind of goes through and experiences, and I just loved being with her and seeing the world from her point of view. It was really, really nice. There's a lot of emotional depth to this book, and a lot of emotional moments, some really brilliant writing as well. So there's just so much to love in conclusion, and pretty much everyone in my book club loved it as well. It is also part of a series. I think there's like 4 or 5 out, so if you like it, then there's plenty more where it came from, which is really brilliant. And overall I give it 4, maybe 4.5 stars. Okay, final book of the month is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Now, this is a classic. A lot of people have probably read this or at least heard of it, and I was a little bit scared going in. So it is set in Colombia, and it is very much doused in magical realism, which I have a love-hate relationship with. Sometimes it's great, more often than not it's just really confusing. So yeah, I was apprehensive to say the least. Now, I took quite a long time to read this because it is long, it is confusing, and it is just a bit of a slog to get through. So it covers 100 years, and it's basically 100 years of this same family who have lots of like generations within that span that all have various different things going on, and there is a whole host of characters. One thing that a lot of people told me on social media when I said that I was reading this was to look online for a family tree because it will make it easier to understand. Now, my edition actually has like a simplified family tree at the beginning, which I'll show you, which was helpful to a degree. But the problem with this book, or not the problem, but the reason it's really confusing, or one of them at least, is that a lot of the characters have the same name. So you really have to kind of keep looking at the family tree in order for it to be useful, because they all have the same name, but they're all kind of variations of the same name. So the author won't use exactly the same name twice. He either uses shortened versions of it, or he uses like a first and a middle name rather than just a first one. So you can differentiate between the characters that way, but it was still confusing as hell. And I'm really glad I read it. I'm really glad I got to the end because it's a really interesting book to discuss. And one thing I said when I talked about it on Instagram was that this would have been such a good book to study at university or even at school, because I would have loved to sit with a group of people and really like pick it apart and listen to other people analysing it, and then in that way just have a better understanding, because me as just a normal ordinary reader really struggled with it. And I really like the cyclical nature of it. I loved that it like really focused on how history is constantly repeating itself and how we don't learn from our mistakes even if we try to. So I loved the kind of commentary. But yeah, overall I can't say it's something I'm going to read again in a hurry, but I do really like discussing it. So if you have read it, then feel free to slide into my DMs so we can discuss, because it's an interesting one. I'll say that. I have no idea what to rate it because, you know, my enjoyment is probably 2 stars, but I know the high regard that people have for this book, so I don't want to insult it. I don't want to insult all those people who love it. So yeah, at the moment it's unrated because I currently can't decide. Okay, And that concludes everything I read in June. So yeah, very good reading month, a couple of 5-star reads, which I'm very happy about, and a few 4-star reads, so overall it's not bad. I already know, because I don't know why I'm looking at my watch, it doesn't have the date on it. It's the 13th of July, and I already know that July is going to be a chunky reading month, because I've already read about 12 books this month, because I was on holiday, and it was pretty much all I did on holiday. So yeah, look out for my very chunky July wrap up at the beginning of August. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and please subscribe to my channel for more. I'll be trying to film some more things this month between now and the next wrap up, so look out for those, and I'll see you next time.